Let's go ahead and start at the very top with the Whiteout in Penn State. This is a game that we have been talking about since well into the summer. We've been, Trey, you predicted that this was going to be the Whiteout game on our road trip episode months ago. I've got to imagine that seeing that hope, that dream come to fruition, we get it under the lights as Oregon goes on the road to Happy Valley. Penn State's a 3.5-point favorite. 6:30 p.m. the NBC primetime game. Trey, I'll just kick it to you. Like, I've got to feel like if anybody out of the three of us has the warm fuzzies, they've got to be kind of overflowing at Casa de Reeves.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I said week 5 is why we do this show, but this is what college football is all about. A night whiteout game in Happy Valley, a big time opponent coming to town. Maybe the country at large not believing in Penn State. This just feels like a Disney movie, right? It feels like if you were making a college football Disney movie, this would be the backdrop. And I couldn't be more excited to get this. Can't remember the last time we got a night game for whiteout. Feels like Fox screws us out of that every single year. And thankfully, we had some network executives at NBC that said, no, we are taking this game in our network draft, and we are going to make sure that this gets the coverage that it deserves. So I'm all for it. I can't wait to sit back and watch this one. And there's some other primetime games that's going to have to share some screen time with, unfortunately, but at least we get a whiteout game at night. I couldn't be more excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, our big three was, when you have two games in the nighttime window, the third one kind of leads right into that ABC primetime game. It was always going to be tough to whittle these down, but Oregon at Penn State, objectively, I think the biggest game going. And we have to do a little bit of obligatory record setting here, right? Just to get this out of the way, we can decide how much we want to lean into this narrative or not. I know it is going to be repeated verbatim this week, so bear with me if you have already heard this. If this is not the first preview that you've watched this week, James Franklin is 4-20 in top 10 games across his career, right? We know that. That is a fact that gets brought up every single time Penn State takes on a team with a little number next to it. He's 8-3 though in whiteout games. And while I'll grant you have to go back to 2016 to find their last win over a top 5 team in a whiteout game. That was a crazy win over Ohio State. There are some good vibes that generally come out when Penn State leans into it, when Happy Valley comes alive. And maybe Oregon is one of those programs that's built and coached to handle that environment. But you do have that dichotomy of big game James Franklin versus his objective success in whiteout games. So the other thing that I'll set the stage with, you have an absurdly high efficiency offense coming to town in Oregon, right? This is what Penn State's defense is supposed to be built to stop. When you brought Jim Knowles over, you brought him over to stop the Oregon Ducks, who come into town averaging nearly 51 points per game. Have they put that up against some questionable opponents? Yes, absolutely. But I think the proof of concept is there that the Oregon offense, when fully operational, is going to put up all the points, whether or not Evan Stewart is healthy. So with that as the stage, a great offense, a great defense, stars on both sides. Trey, I'll kick it to you. Which way are you leaning with, again, the line set at 3.5 in favor of the Nittany Lions?
I think this is another situation we've talked about the last few weeks on the show where there's just so many games early in the year that are big time names, big time brands, teams that we're pretty sure are elite, but we just haven't seen it against another quote unquote elite or even pretty good team yet. So there's really not a lot I can trust in this one. I can't trust James Franklin in a big game. I don't know that I can trust Dan Lanning in a big time spot. I know he went 13-0 in the regular season last year, but you saw what happened in the postseason. He hasn't exactly shaken the big game allegations fully from his ledger yet. I don't know that I can trust this Oregon offense. All these pieces have looked fantastic, but it's been at home against pasties, guys. It hasn't been against the best competition. They haven't exactly gone out and given me a proof of concept in an environment like they're going to face. So I got to look for things that I can, and what I think I can trust is Penn State running the football and playing good defense in front of a raucous home crowd. As crazy as it sounds, I think I'm going to take Penn State minus 3.5. I was kind of surprised by that line. I'm going to lean into it. Penn State can run the heck out of the football. They did it against Oregon last year. They ran for almost 300 yards against the Ducks in Indy in the Big Ten championship game last year. Oregon hasn't exactly looked great stopping the run. I know they did against their lesser non-power 5 opponents. But against Northwestern, they were allowing almost 5 yards per carry in that sloppy makeshift Rector Set Stadium on the banks of Lake Michigan a couple weeks ago. So not exactly balling out, stopping the run when they've had to step out of non-conference play and into Big Ten play. Penn State, we know, is going to have two of the best offensive players on the field in their running back core of Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. I think they can rely on that, but to make sure that I really get that, I need to see more from the receivers. I need to see them work in that play action game. It's time for Traver Pena. It's time for Devontae Ross to get more involved into this offense. And hopefully we get to see that this week. Part of my pick is kind of banking on they've been holding something back because it hasn't always looked pretty the first 3 weeks. But I'm going to roll with the run game. I'm going to roll with the defense, roll with the home crowd, and shockingly take Penn State to cover in this one.
That is one question that I have about this game offensively for Penn State is, yes, they've, destroyed Kent State and Villanova and shut out Florida International. But with Andy Kotelnicki as your offensive coordinator, I just continue to feel like the offense is so bland. Drew Aller is not being asked to throw down the field hardly at all. And their wide receivers, when they've needed to go make catches, they're getting that separation because this is a much more explosive wide receiver core. But to your point, now is the time for the rubber to meet the road. I want to see that for Penn State to truly ascend to the throne that is not only a national championship contender, but I think a national championship favorite when everything is clicking. Couple items going in your favor, Trey. Penn State has 9 sacks so far through the season. That's one of the best marks in the country. Oregon has only allowed 1, but as I was looking through some of Oregon's past film and looking for some opinions from their beat writers, some Penn State beat writers as well, the tackles do seem to be a little bit susceptible. Isaiah World was one that I saw kind of thrown out there, had some not great reps against Oklahoma State, against Northwestern, didn't give up a sack, the 6'9" left tackle transfer from Nevada, I believe. And he has some moments where he's just the Stonewall of China and nobody's getting past him. And he also has a moment against, I can't remember if it was Idaho State, whichever their FCS opponent. It's like a 220-pound defensive end that just pushes him back into last week, into the lap of Dante Moore. So you've got Penn State who can get after it, and they've got multiple different pass rushers. I think that is one thing that goes in favor of the Penn State Nittany Lions. But that being said, Garrett, I think I know where you stand here. You've been the highest out of all of us on the Oregon Ducks. Trey's right. That line seems a little bit high, maybe, for the closeness that I think both of these teams could play in an elite environment. Are you taking the Ducks or the Nittany Lions with that interesting number?
I'm going to take Oregon outright in this game. I think Oregon wins this football game and makes a huge statement. I mean, you said it. I've been the Oregon defender so far, and it seems like I've almost been on an island this offseason, right? It seemed like a lot of the offseason was talking about how you lost your quarterback, and Dante Moore was, he was just going to be a guy who looked just like he was at UCLA, right? The guy that was lost out there, didn't know what he was doing, and nothing could be farther from the truth at this point with Oregon. He has absolutely recreated himself. He has dedicated himself to making himself the quarterback that he needed to be, to the tune of 74% completions, 11 touchdowns, and only 1 interception in the early going. And this is, again, like, the competition level hasn't been fantastic, but it looks like a fine-tuned machine. They got 2 running backs averaging over 11 yards per carry right now. They're a very good offense. Decorian Moore has been an absolute threat out there. I did say, a couple weeks ago, I wanted to see them have a second guy emerge, and I do think that's going to be critical. They need another pass catching option besides Decorian Moore. But with all of that said, I think a lot was made this offseason of the Big Ten quarterbacks, right? And we talked about who was going to make the differences and who was going to be the guy that you can rely on. And that was how we ended up picking apart a lot of these really good rosters, but just said, which guy can you depend on the most? And so far to this season, I think I'm a little bit vindicated on my Drew Aller takes, that I just don't see him being that big play threat down the field. He's crazy efficient. He's extremely good at what they're asking him to do. He just hasn't been a dynamic quarterback who's shown that he can really make a difference in this type of a game, right? When you have the best against the best, and you've got your guys against their guys, and it's a bunch of 5 stars running around the field. I just haven't seen that he can be that guy to this point in his career that can really make the difference, put up the big numbers, and if you need him to drive down the field, win that final, drive of the game to put you over the top. And so in this game, yeah, it's a whiteout. That's going to be crazy. I'm not underestimating what Penn State is going to do with their home field. That is not at all what I'm doubting. But what I will doubt here is ultimately Drew Aller's ability to be the difference maker in this game. Right now, it's weird to say it. I didn't quite think I'd be coming out here and saying it, but I trust Dante Moore to make a play, to connect with DeCorian Moore, to connect with somebody down the field, hit a big play when you really need him to keep things going for the Ducks. And so, look, I think both defenses are fantastic. I think they're both going to be really good, Penn State's especially. But right now, if you ask me who's going to be able to keep some pressure off the run game, who's going to be able to get some of those safeties to scoot back a little bit so that the run game can excel, right now I'm going to lean towards Oregon doing that. I think that they get just a little bit more consistency, and I think their defense clamps down just a little bit more. I'm going to pick the Ducks to win this one to the tune of like 27-20, give it a touchdown late to just ice this one and let the Ducks get out of here with a big statement victory and maybe catapult themselves into that like top 2 or 3 teams kind of range.
I've got good news for you on the wide receiver front. Malik Benson is just 6 yards behind DeCorian Moore in total yards receiving, 201. They've got one of the best tight ends in the country, supposedly, in Kenyon Sadiq, who they haven't asked their pass catchers to do quite a bit because they've been blowing teams out. So they've been rotating a lot of guys in. But Sadiq's a guy that's flashing. Then don't forget about Gary Bryant Jr., the USC transfer, who's up there as well. I'm going to take Oregon plus the 3.5 as well. And there's a couple reasons why. Number one, Penn State's already 0-3 against the spread this season. And it feels like a razor thin margin to me. So giving any sort of boost or cushion to a very talented Oregon Ducks team, despite the environment, I'm going to lean into that number. Oregon's also as dual threat of an offense as you can get. And the highlights have come through the air when they've been blowing out Oklahoma State or taking down Northwestern on the road. A lot of the time you've seen NBC or ESPN flash a nice pass to DeCorian Moore, to Kenyon Sadiq, whoever. But the offense has actually been mostly going on the ground. Garrett, you mentioned 2 running backs that are averaging a boatload of yards per carry. They have 3 running backs that already have over 150 yards. It's been kind of a true running back by committee approach. And knowing Noah Whittington has not gotten the majority of the carries so far. So I think it's a balanced team. They're 10th in the country on the ground. Penn State, we know, is going to get theirs. They've got 8 touchdowns between Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. So I expect that that's where a lot of their offense is going to come. But when I had to make a decision, I'm more disappointed, I think, in what I've seen from Kotelnicki and what they've asked Aller to do. But Aller's going to have to throw the ball into some tight windows, right? He has to step up and make a big throw. The problem is Oregon has been one of the top teams in the country at defending those tight windows this season. They're 15th in the nation in passes defended. If you're telling me that both teams are probably going to get theirs on the ground at some point, I think the defense is what highlights this game for both teams. Somebody's got to make a throw. Somebody has to stretch the field at a critical moment in the game. And guys, as weird as that sounds after the preseason and the questions that we had about Dante Moore coming in, he has looked like an NFL quarterback through these first couple of weeks. The throws that I've seen him make in the tight windows already have certainly impressed me and given me more hope than what I've seen Aller be asked to do. To me, it feels like Dante Moore and this Oregon team may actually be built to go on the road and win a big game. I didn't even mention the linebacking core. That could be the top linebacking core in the country. Maybe they make a big third down stop. I think it's close. I think it's a razor thin margin, but give me the Ducks in this one. I'll go 24-21. Oregon sends James Franklin down to 4-21 in top 10 games, which at that point, I just don't know. I don't know what the conversation is Saturday night. Maybe we'll just leave that pontification for the live show. But let us know. Write in. Oregon, Penn State, which side are you riding? Do you think that line, 3.5, is a little funny? We would love to have you join the conversation.